What's going on there, YouTube? In today's video, we are going to continue our coverage over the Squadron Supreme team from the early 2000s. If you are new to Marvel Comics and don't know why I had to reference a year to go along with the name of the team, the reason why because over the years in Marvel gave us different versions of the Squadron Supreme, and they all came from different universes from the Marvel's multiverse. And so when it came to the 2000 version of the team, this was Marvel trying to spend more time with these characters and give us an origin for the team, but also hope to build a fan base as well. Now remember that the Squadron Supreme are technically characters who represent characters from DC Comics. It was a way for Marvel to have the Justice League without actually having the Justice League in their books. So they made a bunch of characters to represent those characters in their books. Hyperion is Superman, Nighthawk is Batman, Blur is Flash, and Zarda is Wonder Woman. Now, in our coverage, we reached the point that comes after Ultimate Power. Ultimate Power was a crossover between the Squadron Supreme and the Ultimate Marvel Universe. We are not going to spend much time talking about that story, but thanks to that crossover, Ultimate Nick Fury got stuck in the Supreme Universe, and Zarda, who was technically Wonder Woman, went to the Ultimate Marvel Universe. They switched spots, and that's all you really know when it comes to Ultimate Power. And this is actually 5 years after Ultimate Power, and the last story we did for the Squadron Supreme, where now you have Marvel trying to make a universe where characters they have made represent both DC and Marvel, and they all live in one particular universe. So we're about to see a bunch of new characters rise up, but also see some old characters come back as well to make a new team, a new Squadron Supreme. Now, I do want to reference one thing. Also, most of the heroes from the old team have disappeared, and so only a few characters are left behind. Now, when I say disappeared, I really mean they just disappeared. No one knows where Hyperion, Dr. Spectrum, and some of the other characters from the old team had went to. Either way, we still have some old characters left, but we're about to see the rise of a bunch of new characters join forces with the old characters to make up the new Squadron Supreme. And so finally getting into today's video, we actually do pick up right now with a reporter. Now when it comes to this reporter, he is technically referencing things that happened 5 years ago. And what I mean by that is, like I said earlier, when it came to the characters of Ultimate Marvel, when they fought against the Squadron Supreme, it took place 5 years prior from this book right here. And so you have the reporter right now saying that when it comes to America, matter of fact, the entire world, the world is slowly getting back on their feet right now, because there was a lot of damage done thanks to the storyline in Ultimate Power. And so America is one of the major countries that's technically back on their feet. Now, you also have the reporter bring up different things like, for example, Nick Fury. Nick Fury came from an alternate universe, but apparently Homeboy got a job working for intelligence for the American government, which honestly makes sense because he is a spy, an ex-spy. Either way, he has a new job in this universe. Now, this is the moment where we do see the rise of new characters coming into this universe. But on top of that, though, we're seeing that these new characters are going to represent Marvel characters living alongside with DC characters in this universe. Because that is the moment where you do have the reporter mention that we do have, or America did have, a successful moon mission. And of course that mission was called Icarus 1, or the spaceship was called Icarus 1. Either way, 4 astronauts went to the moon, they found something, they came back to Earth, but ever since they came back to Earth, they had technically been quarantined and no one has seen or heard from them ever since they came back to Earth. Now, of course, right off the bat, you can say this is the Fantastic Four in this universe. 4 people went to space and they came back and now being quarantined. Of course, they got powers in some kind of weird way. But that is the moment where we actually do jump over to Nebraska. Now, when we jump over to Nebraska, we actually do pick up with a young blonde girl who is about to be sexually assaulted by a group of boys. Now, one of those boys is actually her boyfriend, which is really messed up. Either way, that is the moment she is saved by another lady, except this lady looks more like a spider creature in a way, because she does use her spider powers to stop these boys from actually assaulting this young girl. Now, you can tell right off the bat that this character is supposed to represent the Spider-Woman of this universe. One, because of her powers, and two, because of her color scheme. It's red and gold, just like Spider-Woman over in the main Marvel universe. Either way, she does come in and saves the girl from these boys, and then she leaves. And so now we're left to wonder, who is this new character who just appeared out of nowhere? But then we jump back 1 month in the past. Now, when we do, we actually pick up with the astronauts right now coming back to Earth on the Icarus One spaceship. Now, this is a way for us to get the origin of another character we're going to see later on in this video. Because when we actually pick up with them right now, they're just coming back to Earth. And when they do, they have no idea that whatever they found on the moon and they brought back to the Earth apparently affected them in some kind of way. Some kind of virus got attached to their bodies. And because you had different people technically going there to see them, it began to give the virus the ability to travel thanks through human contact. And so it traveled across the country and it went to an unknown spot, an unknown grave for an unknown soldier that apparently died in a past war. And this is going to lead into the origin of another character coming up in this universe. But now we pick up with Nick Fury and also Emil Burbank. Now remember, Emil Burbank was on the old Squadron Supreme team. And when it comes to Emil, he is technically the smartest person in the entire world. Because when it came to Hyperion and his spaceship that brought this airborne virus, when the airborne virus gave other people actual active abilities like flying or super speed, when it came to Emil, it just made him very smart. Now, Emil was the person who actually made the Icarus One spaceship. Of course, the same one that just came back from space. But apparently, right after Icarus One came back and our astronauts are quarantined, well, Emil and Nick Fury, they have not heard anything else at all. And that right there is a problem. They're being kept out of the loop about any updates on the astronauts or the Icarus One spaceship. And the reason why they should be kept in the loop is because Nick Fury is intelligence. He's part of the American government. But on top of that, when it comes to Emil, he built that spaceship so that they'll have the ability to actually travel to the moon. And so he should know what actually happened out there on the moon. And so it's Emil and Nick Fury saying, we need to figure out what exactly happened to those astronauts, because I feel like something big happened to them and the rest of the government is not trying to tell us to at all. But then we pick up with a new character, and that character is Nail. Now, when it comes to Nail, Nail is actually going to be a very important character. And the reason why I'm saying that, because she was the spider creature we saw earlier in this book. Now, when it comes to Nail, she does not remember being that spider creature. And the reason why I'm saying that, because she tells us that she has some crazy dream that she had actually attacked 3 boys from her class. In reality, she did do that. She did kill off 3 boys in her class. Not all 3 of them. She killed 1 of them. The other 2 did survive. But she did attack 3 boys. And that's when she realized that her room is covered in some kind of webbing. And of course, that is the moment we realize, oh my gosh, she is a spider creature. But unfortunately, when she turns into that spider creature, she does not remember doing anything at all. And so now she is going to keep a journal as a way to hopefully remember things or to write down what she sees in her dreams. But then we jump over to Arcania. Now remember, when it comes to Arcania, she has the ability to warp reality on a quantum level. Now with that being said, when we actually pick up with her, she's right now using her powers as a way to make money on the side. She's technically selling her powers to pull off miracles, quotation marks, for random people in the world, and sometimes military people as well. Now with that being said though, that is the moment she is contacted by Nick Fury. Now this is Nick saying, hey listen, Emil and I believe that there is something going on with the Icarus One spaceship, but we need your powers to actually break into the base that's holding the astronauts from that spaceship to see what exactly happened to them and to hopefully learn more about what was on that spaceship. And you have Arcania agree to help Nick Fury only because she also wants to know what is the American government and the American military hiding from the rest of the world, because they're known from hiding a lot of different things like they did with Hyperion. And so that is the moment where we actually jump over to a random nightclub. Now when we do, we actually pick up right now with some random terrorist that does plan to blow up this nightclub. Now before he's actually able to pull this master plan off of his, that is the moment he's actually stopped by a new character, and this new character is going to represent the Captain America of this universe. Because out of nowhere, you do have a guy appear and he's covered in so many different kinds of flags. But of course, he's wearing a World War II helmet. Either way, this is the Captain America of this universe. Except when it comes to this guy, his origin is completely different from Steve Rogers. But technically you can tell he is a way for this universe to have a Captain America. And he does defeat the terrorists just like that. But getting back over to Nick Fury, Emil, and Arcania, we do see them right now breaking into the military base that is technically holding the astronauts from Icarus One. Now when they actually break into the base, of course they have to use all their different kinds of abilities so that they will not be caught and of course get arrested for breaking into the place. But after a few more pages of them walking around trying to figure out what happened to those astronauts, well, that is the moment they walk into one particular room. And when they do, they find the astronauts, except right now they're being held in some kind of containers because they all had received powers. And so the question is, what in the world happened to them out in space that gave them powers? Because now this right here is technically the Fantastic Four of this universe. Now getting into the second chapter, we actually jump over to California. Now when we do, this again giving us another character who's going to represent a Marvel character in this universe, but continue the process of saying like, listen, we're going to have both Marvel and DC characters live together in one particular universe. Either way, when we jump over to California, we actually see a fire happening right now. And when it comes to this fire, apparently a nanny and 3 kids are trapped inside the fire. Now that is the moment they are actually saved by a guy known as Tucker Ford. And Tucker Ford was actually able to build an Iron Man armor. Yes, he is the Iron Man of this universe. And matter of fact, I think they even call him Iron Man in this universe. But here's Iron Man right now here to save the day. And so then we have to jump back over to Nick Fury, Emil, and also Arcania. Now when we do, it's them right now showing us that they had released the 4 astronauts who were being kept inside containers, and of course they were holding some kind of stasis. Either way, once they come out of there, you then have the 4 astronauts tell us what happened to them out in space that led to them being quarantined. And apparently when they got to the moon, they found something out there, some kind of container. Now originally the group was going to leave it behind. And the reason why, because one of the members of the group realized that the item did look very similar to Hyperion's spaceship. And so they said, no, leave it here, and let's go back to Earth. Now, another member in the group said, no, I am going to call up the higher-ups and tell them what we found. And of course, as soon as he did that, they were directed to bring that item back to Earth, which of course they did. Now, without them realizing that, they were actually infected by some kind of spores. Either way, a few days into them being quarantined, their powers began to manifest. Now, with that being said though, right after their powers began to manifest, you then had the American military look at them and say, oh, you got powers. That is great. We are going to make you into weapons. And so they put drugs into their food, and of course to knock them out. And then they threw the 4 astronauts into containers to keep them asleep until they were able to figure out what their powers exactly do, but also get people to control them, handlers. Either way though, they were going to use these 4 astronauts as a way to be weapons for the American military. But then we jump over to Washington, D.C. Now, when we do, we actually pick up with Old Soldier. That is his code name. He is the Captain America of this universe. Now, either way though, when he walks in, or actually he breaks into the Pentagon, you have everybody looking at him like, who in the world is this guy right here? And on top of that, what do we do with him? Because we have no idea who he is, what he can do, and why in the world he's here right now. But either way, it's Old Soldier saying, I need help technically. Like, he needs help because he has no idea who he is. Now, we do jump back over to Neil for really just one page. And honestly, it's to show us that Neil is not like the other characters in this book so far, where there's some kind of hero in some kind of way. The Iron Man, the Old Soldier, the 4 astronauts, Arcania, Nick Fury, and Emil. They're all heroes. Because when we see Neil right now, we see that she's actually using her powers as a way to capture classmates who are actually mean to her. And so it shows that she does use her powers for her own personal gain. Either way, it could mean that she could be a bad guy down the road. But for right now, we have no idea yet. Now, that is the moment where we actually pick up with the astronauts once again. Now, when we do, it's a way for us to actually learn more about their ability. So we start off with John. John can technically make himself intangible. We pick up with Peter, and Peter can technically cast energy. When it comes to Ted, he's able to, well, actually he turned himself into a tree-like creature. And then we see when it comes to Catherine, the wife to John, she has the ability to be at 2 places at once. Now, with that ability right there, we kind of find out that she's going to use her ability as a way to continue her affair with Ted, the tree-like creature, because she's married to John, the guy who has the ability to turn himself intangible. Either way, she's cheating on him with Ted, the tree-like dude. Now, you have Fury actually tell them that their master plan is to stay here in this place right now until Fury is able to get a bunch of reporters here to show what the American military has been doing with the astronauts, because the entire world wanted to know what happened to them because they disappeared for an entire month. And so it's Fury saying, I'm going to bring in a bunch of reporters to show off what they did to you guys as a way to say we cannot trust the American military or the American government. Now, that is the moment you have Arcania freak out, because Arcania used her powers to keep the soldiers at bay, but because she used her powers for a very long time, her powers are beginning to wane out. And so that's the moment you actually do have the 4 astronauts just decide they want to leave. They don't want to stay here at all anymore. And so they blow a hole in the wall and they all leave. But when they do that, thanks to them, Arcania freaked out and lost control of her powers. And with that happening, all the soldiers that were under her control are no longer under her control, and they all run into the room to technically capture Nick Fury, Emil, and also Arcania as well. Now, when we jump into the 3rd chapter, we actually do pick up with Nick Fury right now being questioned by Captain Brown of the FBI. Now, of course, because it does look like that Nick Fury, Dr. Burbank, Emil, and also Arcania have broke into this military base to break out the astronauts. Now, of course, you know Nick Fury, he always has a cover story ready to go. And so, as soon as Captain Brown, the FBI, walks in and questions him, he said, oh, technically, we were being mind controlled by them to break them out. That apparently one of them has the ability to mind control people. They technically took over our minds and had us break into here to break them out. Now, Nick Fury's cover story can actually work because while you had the 4 astronauts breaking out of the airbase to get away from Nick Fury and his crew, they on accident knocked out Emil Burbank. He was put into a coma, and Arcania just disappeared and left. And so when it comes to Nick Fury, his cover story is literally covered up. There's no way anyone can poke a hole through his cover story. And so Captain Brown, the FBI, has no choice but to believe him. But either way, now her next job is to hopefully find the 4 astronauts and bring them back over here. But getting over to the 4 astronauts, that is where we begin to learn a tad bit more about these characters. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to these characters, they're not like the Fantastic Four. Because when it came to the Fantastic Four, they were like a family. Now yes, they did fight, but they fought like a family does sometimes, and occasionally they would make up. But when it comes to these 4 guys right here, they are technically not like a family at all. And the most part, most of the characters in this group, they want to get rid of their powers. They hate the idea of their powers. Now, one of them enjoys the idea of having powers, but the rest of them does not. And so right now, you do have the 4 characters kind of show infighting between each other in this group to show us that yes, they may have some similarities to the Fantastic Four, but at the same time, they don't. But then we jump over to Chicago. Now, when we actually jump over to Chicago, you should already know who we are about to pick back up with again, and that is Nighthawk. Now remember, when it comes to Nighthawk, he is the Batman of this universe. And just like Batman, his family died. The only big difference is though, when his parents were killed off, they were killed off because they were black. They were killed off by a racist person. And so when it comes to Nighthawk, he's really big on only protecting the black community in Chicago. Either way, when we actually pick on him right now, he is attacking some more bad guys in his city, or who he claims to be bad guys in his city. Either way, he is then confronted by Blur, and of course, Blur is Flash of this universe. Either way, you have Blur coming to Nighthawk about the idea that more and more heroes are popping up, except these heroes only began to pop up after the Icarus One spaceship came back to Earth. And so right now, it's Blur saying this is very similar to what happened to the Squadron Supreme. Because remember, when Hyperion came to Earth on his spaceship released some kind of airborne virus. And that airborne virus gave people abilities left and right. And so what if Icarus One, whatever they brought back from the moon, is the reason why we have new characters popping up left and right across the world at the moment. And so then we pick up with Tucker Ford. Now, when we exactly pick up with Tucker Ford, the Iron Man of this universe, he's right now meeting up with Nick Fury. Now, when he does meet up with Nick Fury, it's him saying, I want to give you my services. I want to exactly help you guys out there to fight against other power beings that could be out there in the world. Now, remember guys, Tucker Ford is the Iron Man of this universe, but here's the catch. Because he's saying right now that he feels like he has some connection to Icarus One, the spaceship. Because he said originally he was working on this suit as a way to help humans out to fight against Hyperion and Zarda, because he was so scared of a future where they could wipe out the human race completely just like that. And that is why he made this Iron Man suit. But he said he had a hard time actually completing it, but until Icarus One came back from space. And this is very similar to Emil Burbank. Because remember, Emil Burbank was a character who got the ability to be very smart. only because Hyperion spaceship released some airborne virus. Where other people's got active powers, when it came to Burbank, his powers is more the idea that he just got super smart. And so what if Icarus 1 did something similar? It brought in new characters into this world, but at the same time for Tucker Ford, instead of getting an active power, he became very smart or very good with machines, very similar to Iron Man or very similar to Forge over on the X-Men. Either way, when it comes to Tucker Ford, he's saying, I want to join your team, Nick Fury, and Nick Fury says yes. But then we jump back over to Blur, and you have Blur actually meet up with Arcania. Now, when he does meet up with her, it's Blur saying, hey, listen, I feel like there is some kind of connection between Icarus 1 spaceship and all these new characters popping up left and right. And that is the moment you have Arcania say, you're correct, I feel like. Because me, Nick, and Emil, we had just found 4 astronauts who were technically locked up in some containers, and they all had powers as well. And those 4 astronauts came from the Icarus 1 spaceship. And so this is Blur saying, oh my gosh, that means they brought something back here and it's now giving more people powers. And so now they're going to pay a visit to, of course, Emil Burbank, because he just came out of his coma. But to wrap up today's video, we do jump back over to Nick Fury. Now, when we do, it is Nick Fury right now getting confronted by General Alexander, who also brought in Old Soldier, of course, the Captain America of this universe. Either way, it's right now General saying, listen, I have no idea what to do with this guy right here, but I feel like you might have an idea what to do with him and hopefully figure out who he is and what is his origin story. But then we jump over to New York, where of course we pick up with Emil Burbank, who just came out of his coma. And apparently Emil now has some big plans to come down the road. The problem is though, Emil is kind of like Lex Luthor, where he is really smart, but a lot of times his brilliant plans are not really made to help out other people, instead to help him out instead. And so we're left to believe that Emil Burbank is going to do something big down the road. But the question is though, what? And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.